Hello and welcome to the CRM Zen Show where we talk about all things Zoho. This is episode 112, Talk Me Off the Ledge, recorded on September 8th, 2020 from Zenatta Consulting. I'm Brett Martin.
And I'm Tyler Colt, and let's get right on into the news.
All righty. So, very slow news week, like ridiculous. So I dug up 3 stories, but I think I found a bunch of other cool stuff for us to talk about anyway. So we'll start with Zoho now allows you to customize your WorkDrive layout and preferences. Not really too much here, but kind of nice. You have a choice out of the gate as to whether you want it to be evergreen, calming blue, or passion red. You can go from a list view to a thumbnail view. I kind of like this default sorting. So last modified, name, time created. That's kind of nice, I think. And then you can just say, hey, what do I want my default landing page to be whenever I open WorkDrive? And it's my folders, recent files, or last open folder. So small little customization, but I think kind of a improvement to your quality of life, Tyler.
Yeah, hopefully a sign of things to come. I mean, more and more WorkDrive is really becoming just an excellent tool. A little color customization there is nice to have, but some of those other things that, you mentioned there, going from list to thumbnail, setting up your default sorts, that's some actual good value there that helps you find what you need a little bit quicker and easier in WorkDrive.
Yeah. And what they've done with all the metadata that you can now embed, we talked about that a couple of months ago, and then they added tagging in and just all these other things. It's fantastic. I mean, we'll talk about this a little later on the show, but we were able to make a move to Zoho Mail this week, and maybe it is the time to move everything from Google Drive to WorkDrive 100%. I think it's there.
Yeah, one of the things that's exciting about WorkDrive outside of this this update here is, for a couple clients, we've done some integrations using Flow. We're like maybe on a certain deal stage, you generate an external folder in WorkDrive and write that link back to the deal, or there's kind of some nice little bits of automation between WorkDrive and some of the other Zoho applications that you just can't quite replicate when you're using Google Drive or OneDrive. I mean, that one there is one that we would use internally. So I think it's as we make some of these moves to centralize with Mail or with WorkDrive, I think that's on the hit list for us.
Yeah, it's there's so much that, as they keep making all these improvements, and the power of Flow. Flow breaks occasionally, but it seems to be getting more and more stable as as it goes along with time. I mean, you're right. There's just so much you can do, and the integrations are great. So we will see. Also, Zoho People. I said it was a slow news week, but Zoho People's newsletter is out for September, and this is great. We talk about this. A lot of the different product groups are putting out these monthly newsletters, and we cover a lot of this on the show. But if you're a Zoho People user, you need to subscribe to this and take a look at it. The latest webinars, what they're working on, all those kind of things. They're doing a really, really nice job with these newsletters, and I love to see them doing this. So more and more, kudos to the Zoho People team. Really nice job you've done here.
And this is one of those applications that we don't work with on a day-to-day. We'll plug it in for people as needed, but it's a really, really powerful tool. Just the other day, I was working with one of our clients to set up the integration with Zoho Projects and Zoho People, and it's very slick. Like all of your time logs from projects roll into People, specifically tracking against those tasks and projects.
Yep. If
someone submits a time off request in People and it's approved, that will display in the projects calendar as you go to assign them tasks. So really, I think they see it as kind of that home base with these integrations to other apps. And, as they are always adding more and more integrations and more functionality, it's great that they, put these out for people to keep up to date with what's going on.
Yeah, it's fantastic. One of the things about People too is their payroll is getting better and better and better. And, I think once they start rolling payroll out, so they get all 50 states at least, that's going to be interesting because, like you say, the time logs roll in. You can automatically generate, pay rates, all those kind of things. So a lot of power to it. It's a really, really great application for employee management and HR management. So, it's good to see. It's good to see these developments go into it as well. I think it's on our maybe list right now because it does miss a few things, but getting a little better. All righty, and then we talked about this, I think, 6 months ago. Zoho now have the ability. You've always had the ability to attach images But Zoho actually added an image field. So you can now say, hey, I'm going to create this record layout and I'm going to have an image field. Maybe it's a before and an after, whatever you want it to be. If you're real estate, maybe you want to move in, move out, you can basically attach images directly into the record in a specific name field, kind of different than attachments. So now they've got some API that's going to allow the support of images coming in and out as record locked and not approved. So this is more up your alley, but looks pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it's a common use case, right, where you might be capturing images in some type of, frontward facing tool. Maybe it's in Creator, maybe it's a separate app that you have. And this is basically opening up an avenue to insert those images via API. So pretty slick. They're doing an interesting thing here where they're having Zia it's not very clear to me reading through this exactly what they're doing here, but they're kind of having Zia look at these images and validate and approve them to go into the CRM. I'm not really sure what those criteria are that would get it into this locked state.
Zia Vision. Now, did we talk about Zia Vision before? I think we did. It's where they can classify living and non-living objects. But
I talked about it a long time ago. I think so. Way back.
So this is basically, I guess the interesting part about this is originally I think it was just basically nothing more than image recognition software, right? Mm-hmm. But now it looks like it's doing validation?
Yeah, looks like it.
Wow. Zia Vision. Dude, I like the name. Anyway, all right. And that is the entire news for the week. But we've got some interesting mobile news. So iOS 14 was released yesterday, actually. I think it came out Thursday. I got it on my phone. It's pretty cool. It has a ton of new features, and every single application seems to be embracing all of these new features that I had, and Zoho's no different than that. And so they basically rolled this out for, the entire suite of their products, it seems, as they come through. So out of the gate, they've got this iOS and iPadOS 14. All the finance apps got new widgets. Kind of pretty neat. I mean, Zoho Expense, you got a mileage tracker widget, you got pending approval widget. Zoho Books has got that timer, which I think is great for project tasks. So all these nifty little widgets that are now enabled using iOS 14. Zoho's jumping on this, and I tell you what, they're an Apple house. I think we've talked about this in the past. Everybody's got Macs, everybody's got iPhones. So man, do they really do embrace the changes when they come out.
Mm-hmm. It was like when they rolled out previously a lot of the like PDF text recognition in iOS. They implemented that basically same day in all the different Zoho applications. This is cool. I mean, just in general with what they're doing with iOS 14, the ability to embed these widgets kind of just naturally directly into the UI is really slick. So I think it'll be cool to see what comes of this over time, where, this is V1, right, with these initial widgets that come out. But you're interesting to see how customizable and kind of editable these become over time.
Yeah, and they've, as they continue to keep up with these, it's just, to me, what they did with, you now have the ability in iPadOS to use this tool that Apple came up with called Catalyst to spin these into OS 10 applications, right, to run on the desktop. And I think that's really interesting too, as they get more and more powerful. I mean, some of these features, I'd almost like to have this version of Zoho Books on my desktop, right?
Yep.
And I think as they spin this up, it's, so these applications for iPadOS, they tend to just port directly over to the Catalyst application. So if you're running, if you notice the new version of Zoho Books that you run the actual iOS application, if you're a Mac user, it's the iPad app. So good stuff. And then they also did it for Bigin, Notebook, and Desk. Nothing for CRM that they actually announced, but pretty interesting that this. I mean, Bigin seems to be front and center. But I look at what they've done here, and I want it for CRM. Right? It gives you all your activities for the day. It gives you your tasks. This needs to come to the CRM application, period. I don't understand. I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I would imagine it would. Maybe they're starting with Bigin because they see that with the sync to the CRM maybe being that lightweight front end that you would use, for a mobile application. But definitely interesting to see updates like this come out for Bigin first. You'd imagine they'd both get it. A little bit odd for it to be, starting here with the application that has less usage.
Yeah, well, hopefully it comes out in a few days. Otherwise, you're going to be talking me down off the ledge. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is part of that whole thing last week. So now you do the synchronization, right? And you, on your phone, since you're probably only going to want to do simple things anyway, you just use the Bigin app on your phone, and then you can manage it that way since it's fully synchronized with CRM.
Did you notice the logo and title on this now is Bigin by Zoho CRM? It didn't used to have that little subline there. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see we're looking at the article, and the logo and name now is Bigin by Zoho CRM. So I don't know, maybe that was there the whole time and I just didn't see it, but
no, that's there. That's crazy. Man, we should get a product manager on. Make a call. I'd love to get the Bigin product manager on and find out what exactly,
because we do a lot of speculating. We do a lot of speculation about the goal of Bigin and kind of where they see it going. Should try to hunt them down and see if they'll give us a little insight.
I think they got to have some laughs at us. But these widgets are just great. I mean, if you're not watching the show, I mean, you basically on your iPhone, your entire day as it relates to what's in the CRM is there. The number of calls, your number of tasks, your activities, and a whole bunch of different ways of displaying these various widgets. A whole new UI pipeline, which is just like crazy good. The ability to kind of move things through your pipeline in here. All these shortcuts. I mean, it's dang. They've got some great stuff that they've built into Bigin. So rock and roll. All right, so moving on to things we noticed. I am excited about this one, Tyler. You pointed it out that evidently we missed this. I think we talked about on the last show that like in June, there was a beta where Zoho Mail can now be used as a straight up email client, an IMAP client. It could be used as POP before, but it now was IMAP, and you had to do it in beta. And then we got on it this week, and we requested it, but it turns out it didn't matter because it looks like it's open to the public now, huh?
Yeah, we had a client actually get the notification. It was funny. They had reached out asking if there was a way to do IMAP, and I told them no, but it's coming soon. And basically the very next day, that same client got a pop-up saying it's been released. So they asked for it at just about the perfect time because it was rolled out a couple days later. And the nice thing about IMAP, for those who don't do a lot of email administration, is that there's basically a way to use Zoho Mail as your email client without having to migrate your entire mail system over to Zoho. So it's just a good way, especially, you may want to migrate eventually anyways, but you can test out Zoho. You can kind of see if you like it without having to, migrate all those MX records over to Zoho.
Yeah. And this now gives us the best of both worlds. So if you followed the show, you know that about every 6 months, we migrate everything from Gmail to Zoho Mail. We run in Zoho Mail for a few months to see if it's perfect for us and ready for prime time, kind of take a vote internally. Always historically, the vote has been we're moving back to Gmail. And so then we migrate everything back over to Gmail. Now we don't have to. I just went in, I did IMAP. I looked at the last time we did the migration, which, by the way, was a lot longer than I thought. It was May 13th of 2019. So we have been off of Zoho Mail for a lot longer than I thought. Anyway, went back, it pulled all that mail in from Google. So now everybody in our company can have the best of both worlds, because the advantages, I tell you what, dude, I started playing with all the new widgets and they are so nice. I mean, you've got a client, you're reading their email, you can now just click over and go, oh, what's the status of their invoices? What's the status of their current SOW? Let's look into the CRM, let's look into books. I mean, just absolutely fantastic. And those widgets, they've just added more and more and more of them. So I'm excited. I think, we've always been a big fan of the app mentions. You don't have to forward it. You can just go at the bottom of an email and at Tyler, at Josh, at Sky, take a look at this, and you can comment on the emails that way. So I'm excited to dig back in and see if I can live 100% in Zoho Mail. And then, I guess if that's the case, it's kind of nice, though, to give people a choice of both, I think, at least in our organization.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the biggest, as you mentioned, one of the biggest advantages, it's all those pre-baked Zoho integrations, right? So one of our big ones is we use Cliq all the time, and you can open up a Cliq channel about an email in just about one click, right? And have a whole conversation about that, or create these streams, which are those app mentions where if I get an email, I can just type at Brett, and we can have a whole conversation about it without having to forward and respond back and forth, about that email. It also gives people the ability to respond to it, so you don't have to forward to have someone else respond to an email. It's just very, very slick for a lot of those collaboration tools.
Yeah, and fairly easy to do. So if you're using Outlook, Office 365, or Zoho, you're good to go. It does have an all others where you can completely configure it. It's strange that we talked about it before the show that they left Google off of this, because Google is the default on all of theirs. It's just one click authenticate and go. That was kind of left off, so I had to manually put in the IMAP and the SMTP settings and the port numbers and all that kind of stuff to get it to work, but fairly straightforward. If you are doing that, all you have to do is, I would just recommend go into your CRM and click on your email, and you can basically see all the settings right there. It gives you the ports, and it gives you the URLs and everything you need to get there. I also will tell you, though, that Google considers Zoho Mail to be an unsafe email client. So it's not doing a proper handshake. So you will have to go in and turn on, allow unsafe apps to access. So Google considers certain things unsafe. This happens all the time with what I know are very, very safe applications, and I know that Zoho Mail's got a lot of security built into it. So for some reason, it's not saying hello properly, I guess, to Google, and so you have to go in. So there's a couple things you got to do if you're using Gmail to get this to work, but I think it's worth it. Good stuff. And that brings us to our implementation of the week. What do we got, Tyler?
Yes, this was kind of a simple one that I wanted to highlight here around using CRM Blueprints to create, simple customer intake processes, right? So a common thing that's going to happen, is you're going to get an inbound call, right? You're going to want to collect name, email, phone number, maybe some address information, maybe some information about a transaction. And one of the things that we oftentimes see is that you can put all those fields onto the page, but if you don't have a process that kind of highlights and guides people to fill them in, right, then you end up having kind of incomplete customer records in your system. And so what Blueprints can do is basically create a structured process with little buttons that allow a user to move records through stages, right? So you might have a field here called intake status, right? And it'd be a little pick list field, and at each movement of one pick list option to another, you can require certain fields, you can create tasks to follow up, you can run custom functions, right? Just as people are moving through these processes. One of the other things you can do is actually include notes and directions at each step to kind of guide the user in terms of what they should be filling in. So in this kind of simple use case, we set up a blueprint that maps through, just a handful of options or different steps, right? So we have the contact information collection, right? Then when we hit that step, you get a little pop-up on the page that requires that we fill in, email, phone number, and mobile, right? Or maybe you'd want email and home phone number, right? Once they're finished with that, the next button would be address verification. When they click that, it does a little pop-up and requires those sets of fields. Once you're completed with that, maybe you want to get some transaction information like their budget, their time frame. So it's kind of just a quick way to guide people through filling out certain fields and kind of capturing certain key pieces of information. Nice thing about it is just to make sure that, you might want some of this information collected by, maybe someone doing some outreach work for you before they would ever hand this off to the inside sales team. So this is kind of a way to validate that all those different data points are being collected in that intake process. And so, I mean, you can make these things, these blueprints, very complicated, right? Where they're branching through, 20, 30 different stages and, have conditional logic around which stages are available and not. Sometimes we find those to be a little restrictive because if there's any variability in the process, then the blueprint is going to get in the way more than it helps. But with something simple and straightforward like this, where it really just does need to go through these exact steps, a blueprint can be a really powerful tool for managing that process.
Yeah, it does. It makes sure that the process is followed every step of the way. I mean, that's what's key, because you can also do some of this with wizards, but wizards aren't necessarily going to hold you in lockstep, right?
Yeah, and I think the wizards will be where we'll go with these eventually. They just have some some missing functionality so far. They're pretty new. The wizards are a pretty new tool in the CRM. So there's just a couple little hiccups with them about the way that the buttons work to move from one page of the wizard to the next. Like every button either needs to save the record or move the record to another page. You can't have a button that just does a thing on the current page that you're on. So for example, maybe they do address verification, then they're supposed to click a button that pings a Google Maps API to validate the address.
Right.
Well, the problem with the wizard is that button also needs to move them to a different page.
Right.
And so then you'd have to have a button to then move them back. They're a little too new right now. But I think, in the long run, that's where a lot of this will go. But these blueprints kind of get that done.
I think blueprints are what you need for that. Like you're just saying, I think the wizards, though, they are just for just a simple way of filling it in, right? Either that or just migrate your staff to Bigin, and then you have the same thing. I think it's basically just one big wizard. All right. Good stuff. Let's move on to our reads of the week. And this says this week's read. It's reads. I chose 3 this week. We'll start off with the first one, which was from CustomerThink. I actually ended up with a couple over at CustomerThink. And this one is, how to get started with account-based marketing in 8 easy steps. For those of you who don't know, account-based marketing is the sales team and the marketing team agree on targeted accounts that they're going to go after. And then they work in a concerted effort to penetrate into those accounts and to sell directly into those accounts. And it's a extremely effective method of selling. I mean, way more effective than just kind of scattershot, we're going to do this. So I found this to be a really interesting article. And it kind of talks about how to get it set up, how to use it, what your program should look like. Oftentimes CustomerThink, their articles are a little smaller, but this is actually short. This is actually a really, really detailed article on how to design it, how to set up your plan, everything you kind of need to know to get going with account-based marketing and how to set it up. So great article.
And I think this highlights one of the things that that you've mentioned a couple times. I don't know if we've mentioned it on the show, but that one of the philosophies is that you want your sales and marketing team to be working together. They really shouldn't be two distinct silos.
Yes.
Right. And obviously you're going to have people that are focused on marketing and people that are focused on sales, but they really should be kind of lockstep with each other with the same goals and intentions. And this is a good way to kind of align those two groups.
Yeah, I agree. I think to me, the most successful companies that have a VP of sales and a VP of marketing and don't have a VP of sales and marketing, just over all of them to make sure that there's a concerted effort. It's a big miss. It's a really big miss, right? And so it's something that I think that you should always have or think about that anyway. So shout out here to Derek Edmond from Co-Marketing. Great job, buddy. A nice article, really, really well done, and CustomerThink coming through. And then we have 2 more articles. So last week we talked about Zoho released Zoho Workplace, and originally there was mostly articles from Indian publications that were kind of fawning about, Zoho's so wonderful. But this week, some big publications came out. CustomerThink again, an article by Thomas Wieberneit, Zoho Workplace. David is swung as sling, and then over at what's the name? Diginomica. a great article from CRM to ERP to productivity vendor, how Zoho Workplace fits into the future of work and their stance against work surveillance. This is an extremely long read. It's a great little interview as well, where they kind of go through all of the various elements of what's going on. But one of the things I love is that they talk about the pricing structure. And there's the quote from this: "Workplace finds Zoho in unintentional disruptor mode again, pursuing a different approach to collaboration than the so-called giants, including a more compelling take on data privacy. The pricing is also Zoho style, Gangnam style, Zoho style." $3 per user per month, for entry level standards version. I mean, that's just crazy. The pricing that they come up with this, and I think the full version $7 if I want to, which also includes things like meeting and all the other stuff. They do an interview with Raju Vignesa, who's I don't know what he's the chief evangelist for Zoho, I think is his title. Yep. Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
And it really just is a pretty insane value. I mean, for a couple dollars a month, you could phase out Google Drive, Zoom. Well, once Zoho Meetings gets their recordings dialed in, you can phase out Zoom. You can phase out Slack and roll over to Cliq. You can add in the benefit of Connect, which is a little intranet for the team. I mean, it's just so much value in one unified platform at such a low price that it's a pretty crazy product offering.
Yeah, and then the CustomerThink article breaks it all down as well. And another kind of thing I pulled out of here that I thought was really, really interesting is, we know that the big players in this are Microsoft and Google, right? Microsoft Office and then Google G Suite. And according to Statista, Google has 57% of the Office Suite market, and Microsoft has 42.6% of the Office Suite market, which leaves only 0.4% for all the other players. Now, he points out that he's not too sure about these numbers because, quite frankly, I have Office and I have Google and I have Zoho and, I have Apple. I mean, I've got all of them, right? So I wonder what that really looks like at the end of the day. But, this is a fairly mature marketplace. And I think to get people to slowly migrate to use another Office suite, it's a big deal, right? And it takes a lot to make that happen. But I think with this bundle of applications and the quality of the applications across the board, it could happen. And now maybe even with this IMAP, maybe that's another piece of this puzzle, right? Now that the email client can just be used as IMAP, you don't have to depend on that. I don't know. There's a lot there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out. I think it'll be another one of those, kind of how we talk about, Bigin potentially being a gateway drug into Zoho CRM. Workplace could easily be seen in that same way of being just such a low cost entry point. You start interacting with these apps, seeing some of the integrations, you do a little research and see how they would all tie into the CRM or into books, and it becomes a really, really enticing option.
Yeah, I mean, what is the pricing on this again? I want to bring it up here so I can look at it. So if you're paying monthly, it's $7 per user per month. And that gets you Zoho Mail, WorkDrive, Meeting, Connect, Showtime, Cliq, the full Office suite. That's crazy. Crazy. I mean, that's just so ridiculously inexpensive. I mean, I think people will come into this just for some of these point solutions, right?
Yep.
For Meeting or Showtime, please listen to us, fix the recording quality. And then it's amazing. I mean, just literally just a crazy offering. So kudos to Zoho again, and they're getting some really good press, and I think they deserve it. All right, and now over on Zenatta.com, we've got a couple nice things. We've got converting dying leads into closed deals with Zoho Sales Inbox. Interesting article. One of our guys decided to take a swag at Sales Inbox and talk about, this is one of those applications that I absolutely want to love, right? It's like the perfect email application. It just needs to be updated a little bit, but there are people using Sales Inbox, so we wrote this article about it. And if you'd like to know how Sales Inbox works, it basically takes your email that comes in and it breaks it into separate groups. So active deals you've got going on, contacts and leads. So these are an email from somebody that's either a contact or a lead. People that aren't in your CRM, perhaps you'd like to add them, and then colleagues, people you're working with. It makes it super, super simple to kind of just look at all your emails and know what's real and what's not and those kind of things. And it's just a little wonky. It's the actual IMAP integration is a little strange. Things kind of disappeared. It's hard to archive things. There's some issues around it, but it's a pretty darn good application, I think.
And it does give you the ability to centralize your mail client to the CRM as well, right? Which one of the big things about that is all the tracking in the CRM is a little better if you're using email through it. So if you do kind of centralize your communications to sales inbox, you'll access some of the better email tracking around opens and clicks and things like that the CRM provides.
Yeah, and then we went out and we found a nice little 11-page guide on A/B testing in Zoho campaigns. And this is pretty cool because it's not necessarily something that I think is intuitive sometimes when you're in there. So Zoho published this guide, really nice step-by-step on basically how to do all your A/B testing inside of Zoho campaigns. For those of you that don't know, A/B testing is you're going to send 2 emails out, and email A has a certain subject line, maybe a different layout than email B. It will actually go and it'll run a test. It'll say, what is it, 5% or 10%?
You can do a lot of them. You can do up to, I think it's about 50% of the list can be a part of the A/B test, 50 or 60% now.
Yeah. And then Zoho measures what's best and then sends the rest to the one that got the best response. So it's kind of neat, and there's some really, really good stuff in here. So there's a guide how to set that up. And then we've got workflow automation in Zoho campaigns, and we've got a nice little step-by-step user guide here as well that kind of steps you through all of that. I think this is a little dated, but still I think has some relevance. So most workflow automation right now in Zoho campaigns is more drag and drop, but this can kind of run you through all of that as well. And moving right along to our application of the week, Mangools. So we recently, our marketing team went through and took this full, beautiful SEO course. We've talked about SEO, I think, so much on this show and the value of it. We can't stress enough how important it is for you to have a blog, have good SEO, and that's search engine optimization. That means if someone is searching for something, you will show up on page 1. That's the goal, that you show up natively on page 1. Organically you show up. You're not paying Google for a Google ad. You're just showing up organically on that page. And it's really what you want, because when it shows up, then you don't have to pay for that. People then see you as someone who is an authority, and they will then click on your article, go to your website, and hopefully buy your goods or services. Well, there's a great tool that was recommended, and we played around with it and ended up adopting it internally, and it's called Mangools. According to Capterra, it's a package of easy-to-use SEO tools that covers everything from keyword search ranking. It basically does everything. Mangools calls it juicy SEO. And our director of marketing says, man, it's a great application. It makes SEO easy. It starts at $49 a month, and it really does do it all. Great application.
Yeah, it is one of those things that's just so key for scaling an online presence. I mean, it's those Google ads can be intoxicating because you pay your bid, you get to the top of the listing, and you're good to go. But someone could always outbid you, right? So you want to be working on getting this organic search up as well. I mean, we do some of both, but you want your long-term goal to be moving more and more towards this organic search ranking, so that you're not having to pay those prices and get into bidding wars over who gets that top ad spot.
Yeah. All right, and for our tip and trick of the week, I made a quick little video on Zoho CRM social settings. If you don't know, in Zoho CRM, you actually have the ability to connect your Facebook and your Twitter account in the CRM. And when someone goes to your Twitter account and they mention you, or they message you, or they reply or retweet, from you, those people can automatically then be added into the CRM as a lead. It's kind of basic, usually gets their name and it will put in their Twitter handle. That's kind of it. And same thing on Facebook. Every time someone posts, comments, likes, or messages about you, it's going to go ahead and add them in as a lead as well. Super easy to turn on. I think the video is 2 minutes. It takes you through everything you can possibly do in this, who can see it. And this, in a way, also can tie into the whole Zoho, the CRM social, where you actually can have this as a module inside of you have Zoho Social going, and you can say, have a person's Facebook and kind of link in. So when you're in their record, you can see what their latest social media activity is. So this is just another piece of that, but really, really simple to set up. I think probably the real reason for doing this is, like I said, we get clients that they have random leads coming in because this got set up somehow and they don't want them coming in because they're not particularly useful, I think, in a lot of cases, unless you have that person already in there. And then it's not going to add them as a lead. It's just going to note their activity. But this is a little feature, the little known that most people don't really use. So there you go.
All righty. And that's a wrap for our show this week. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, be sure to send them over to us at info@zenatta.com. or just head over to zenatta.com and drop us a line.
And on zenatta.com is where you will find all the latest shows and show notes with links to the episodes we talked about today and then prior episodes as well. You can also go over there and follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our newsletter, follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook. Everything that has to do with Zenatta you can find over at zenatta.com. And that's a wrap. We'll talk to you next Monday.